Brazil is moving up in the world quite literally. The South American nation just surpassed the UK in a list of the world's largest economies. And our next guest, watch Brazil grow from the inside as its longest-serving central bank president. Joining us now from São Paulo, Henrique Meirelles. So congratulations on Brazil's rise to power. It's just part of this global rebalancing of economic power around the world. When does Brazil overtake France and become number 5?
Well, Brazil has had for a long time engaged in a reform building proposition, in the sense that after the crisis in the 80s, Brazil started a program to stabilize the economy, privatization, and some basic reforms. And from 2003 on, it adopted a very tough and austere adjustment program in the fiscal accounts, in monetary policy, and in international reserve building up. Today, with the macroeconomic fundamentals in place, with high level of international reserve, low level of public debt over GDP, credit expansion, stabilized economy, the country eventually is allowing its potential to come into place. And Brazil has grown at a substantial rate during the last 5-6 years, around 5%. And now it's growing at a lower rate, between 3 and 4. But again, which is a very good rate for today's world, and that is enabling the country to gain position in that kind of ranking.
But there are challenges, and one of them is its biggest trading partner is Europe. So how vulnerable is Brazil from a recession in Europe?
Well, there is no doubt that China has increased its share as a trading partner of the Brazilian economy, but still is in between 15 and 20% of the total export destination, versus something below 10% before. But Brazil still has a pretty well diversified export portfolio destination throughout Latin America, other areas of Asia, Middle East, and evidently Europe and the United States. And in addition to that, what is really the main driver for the Brazilian growth now is the domestic consumer market. It's growing at a fast pace still. Middle class, for the first time in history in Brazil, is the majority of the population. 36 million Brazilians joined the middle class during the last years. There is a pretty well diversified industrial basis, and normally there is a balance. When the price of commodities come down, there is some depreciation of the currency, and that favors exports of manufactured goods. When the price of exports are up, as is still the case to some extent, then the currency appreciates as well, and the price of manufactured goods in relative terms in domestic currency come down in reais, and as a result of that, domestic market becomes the main destination for manufactured goods. But then there is a balance. I think the Brazilian economy can cope with that kind of change in the global scenario.
But what kind of measures do we need to see out of the policymakers or central bankers in Brazil to keep it insulated from what's happening around the world, namely in Europe?
Well, the central bank and the fiscal authorities have taken in the past very effective measures to counteract external problems. For instance, in 2008, when there was a very sharp drop in cross-border financing, trade, etc., and there was a very sharp contraction as a result in the Brazilian industrial output, Brazil was able to react very quickly. Central bank on-lent reserves to banks which lent to corporations in dollars, acted strongly in the derivatives markets with using the reserves as a hedge because of some problems of liquidity in that market. Brazil also has a very high level of liquidity of the banking system placed at central bank. It's a very conservative measure, which central bank then was able to direct those liquidity reserves towards the critical areas of the financial system in a way that credit came back very fast. And Brazil in 2008 and early 2009 had probably the shortest or one of the shortest recessions in the world and came out of the crisis stronger and with job creation. In summary, there is then room for monetary stimulus as it's happening and fiscal stimulus if it's necessary. The debt to GDP level, the net public debt to GDP, it's slightly over 38% still. When we had the crisis in 2008, when it hit, it was 44. It came down so far, which means that the country has the condition, has the resources, and has experience with the tools which were developed in 2008 to face any kind of slowdown. Evidently, that it depends on the transmission channel.
All right, very special thanks thank you to Henrique Meirelles. We have to leave it there, the former central banker of Brazil.